Hi, Heather here from Creative Kiwi. Thanks for joining me and watching this video on how to make our large applique baby in a basket design. Now this design is actually part of a larger set, our large applique baby quilt, which you can see there. Now that design set includes the baby applique, the teddy on the moon applique, which is made in the same way as this large design, plus the wording. Now that quilt's actually made completely out of 5x7 designs, so you get all the information in the written detail on the design set. But I really thought that the design could be really cute just on its own for baby showers. As I say, you can get it's a boy on one side and it's a girl on the other. And we've got a wee hanging tag on that there. So that would be cute for baby showers. Also, if the baby's been born, you could use this design as a birth announcement. On the blanket, I've left the blanket portion of the design fairly blank. So what you can do if you've got editing software would be to add the baby's name, date of birth, all those sorts of things, and it could be a very cute birth announcement. Or some of you quilters could put together a quilt in completely different layouts than what I have here using that design. As I say, in that particular quilt, it's the 5x7 version of the baby applique, but you could just do the Sweet Dreams wording with a larger, an 8x12 baby, and that would be the quilt without the additional wording. I'm sure that there's lots of things that you guys can come up with using these designs. Anyway, so let's get on to it. So what you need to make these large baby or large appliques is 2 layers of fabric type water soluble stabilizer. This is so you can actually remove all traces of the stabilizer at the end. Now I'm just showing how to hoop your 2 layers of your stabilizer. We use the pinning method too. This is just to ensure that there is no movement in the hoop. So you can see there, it's actually a 5x7 hoop there, but I'm just showing how you do it. So you hoop your 2 layers of your fabric type water soluble stabilizer, and then you just pin the edges. Now for this design, I'm just using, seriously, it's scraps of fabric. You basically, the largest piece of fabric that you'll need would be the size of your hoop size, and most pieces, like normal applique, you can just use scraps. Now I'm going to show the design reversible with the different colours on the back, so you do need matching bobbin thread. If you were just making this design for a quilt, you wouldn't need the matching bobbin thread. Now for a quilt, you just use like a pellin or a fusible fleece or a light batting. For the 3D baby shower design, I'm using a heavy felt just to give it more body and strength, just to stand up basically together. Anyway, let's get into it. So one of the things with large appliques is that we must stitch them in the correct order. Normally it's because we're doing them as we go. In this particular case, file A, which you can see on screen, is actually we're going to stitch 2 separate segments in the one hooping, but you need to do that first so you can join it in the next hoop. So first of all, we're going to stitch the sort of right-hand picture, which is the bottom of the baby basket. Get that all finished, and then we'll do the basket all in the one hooping. But anyway, you'll see it as we do it. So the first stitch we do is just the outline on the stabilizer. Now I've used a dark thread so you can see, but you should just use a matching thread or something neutral for your design. And as I say, it's just stitching the outline of the fabric portion onto your. So we take the hoop off the machine, and now you're going to put either your piece of fusible fleece or batting over the top of the design, or what I've got, so there's the batting, a piece of fleece just over that portion. I'm going to put that heavy felt because I'm making it the stronger version. But you do the same thing. You're just going to tape in place either your batting, fusible fleece, or the heavy felt. Now you pop your hoop back into your machine, and again you just stitch that outline again. Now what it's going to do is it stitches around the outline obviously, but it's also going to stitch the outline so you can see where your fabrics are going to go. So again, you take the hoop away from the machine, and using some sharp scissors, you're just going to cut away that excess batting or felt, just away from the edges. Now I use a variety of scissors. I've got just using my normal old dressmaker scissors here. Often I use duckbill applique scissors from Echidna. You'll see me use both. Now, because this sample, I'm going to show you the completely reversible design. I'm going to show where you put your fabrics on the back. If you're making this for a quilt, you just skip past the back bit. The actual stitching is exactly the same, the steps are the same, you just would not be putting anything on the back of the hoop. Whereas, as I say, I'm going to show how you can make it completely reversible. So at the moment we're on the back of the hoop and we're going to place our little piece of basket fabric with the fabric facing right side up, just over that guideline on the back of the hoop. And you're just going to use some masking tape just to keep that in place till you get that fabric to the machine. So that's the back. And now we're just going to do the same on the front. And obviously if you're not having this back, you would just do this on the front where you have your fabric over the guideline of the basket and taping it in place. Then we're just off to the machine and you're just stitching the next stitch which attaches all of the fabrics. Now at this point I've still just got a white bobbin in my machine and I'm just using any thread really, so I think it's a brown thread I've got in there. So you don't have to worry about having matching bobbins at this point. So once that is attached, we just take it off the machine, the hoop from the machine. And again, if you've got a backing, then you need to cut away the excess fabric on the back of the hoop, which I'm going to do here in a minute. So what we're going to do now is just place our white fabric. Now it would be right side coming up facing you. So if you're using a different colour fabric, you make sure the right side's facing upwards, but you're just taping over that guideline. Now we're going to do exactly the same on the front of the hoop. So we're just going to cut away that excess piece of fabric just where the top of the basket, the frill of the basket is going to go. And then I'm sure you know what's next. You're just going to tape in a piece of your fabric on the front of the hoop. Exactly the same. Now we take our hoop back to the machine and we're just going to stitch the next thread colour, which is just going to attach that frill. Okay, I'm sure you know what we do next. We're just going to cut away that fabric, all of the fabric now, so around both edges of the fabric, on the back and the front of the hoop. And you can see there I've got my duckbill scissors now. In all honesty, the sharpest scissors you've got and whatever works for you. Now if you're making it completely reversible, at the next steps where you want to start changing your bobbin threads to match, so the next step it's going to do is the zigzag, but it's also going to do the satin stitch of that basket colour. So I'm going to put in brown thread. Again, if you're not making this reversible, you do not need to change your bobbin thread. You can just leave it in the white colour. Anyway, we take it back to the machine and now it's just going to zigzag around those raw edges and do the satin stitch of the basket. Then we're on to the next stitch colour, and again, if you're making it completely reversible, you want to change that bobbin out, and I think I'm doing white, so I've got a white bobbin thread in there. And then it's just going to stitch a decorative stitch around the frill, can't say it correctly, and the satin stitch. And that's the first portion done. Would be finished, but if you remember, we're going to actually now stitch the second part of the design, the basket handle. So we just leave that in the machine and we stitch the outline onto the stabilizer. And I've just continued with the white thread for this. It's just in the construction, so it doesn't matter what thread colour you use. So it's a bit hard to see, but you can see that there is the outline of the basket on the stabilizer, and there's just a little mark just at the top there. And now if you do want to put a hanging tab, on, which obviously only if you're going to make it the 3D version, then I think I'll show it here soon. You just tape a piece of ribbon in place at that point facing in that direction. Yeah, obviously if you're doing this for a quilt, you just completely skip this part. The next step is just to add either your piece of batting, or again I've got the heavy felt and I've used the scrap from last time. It just shows you don't need to throw anything away. So just make sure it covers that guideline. Now on this, all the actual thread colours and detail is in the written instructions that are included in the design file. So this video is just to show you the steps that we actually take when we're making the design. The detail was in the instruction. So I know it looks a bit crazy having a piece of fabric or a piece of batting like that shape, but anyway, it works. It's recycling. And now we're off to the machine and we're just going to stitch the next colour, which is going to stitch down that basket handle. And at this point I've just got the white bobbin thread in and just, well, I'm using a brown thread now. It's just, as I say, you won't see these colours. The next step you will. So again, we're just going to do what we've done in the previous step. We're just going to cut away that excess batting or palin or belt from the edges. And just like the other steps, if you're making it reversible, you put your piece of basket fabric, you tape it on the back of the hoop with the right side facing up. And the same on the front, your basket fabric facing upwards, and tape it in place. And then we're back to the machine. And we're just going to stitch the next colour, which is going to stitch all those fabrics down. Now just go around twice so you've got a nice crisp cutting edge. Now, just as we did before, we're going to use our sharp scissors and we're going to cut away that excess fabric on the front and the back of the hoop. And I have sped the tape up, I'm not that fast at cutting. Okay, so for the next step, if you're making it reversible, change your bobbin thread out. Otherwise, just put in the colour for your basket and just stitch that final colour. And that's actually segment 1 and segment 2 done. So the last time for this segment, we're just going to remove the design completely from the hoop. Just taking out those pins, and then we're just going to cut around it. You cut fairly close to the satin stitch edge. You're going to remove the excess on those edges later on, but these raw edges, cut as close as you can. Basically, they're the bits that are going to be joined in the next segment, so as tidy as you can get that. It just makes it easier for your joins. But as I say, for the other parts, where you've got a satin stitch edge, you can just cut just fairly close, and we remove the excess later. And just be careful not to cut off that cord. Easy done. And that's actually part 1 and 2 of your baby applique done. The next steps follow exactly the same lines. So the next step is to load your hoop size, obviously, and the baby file B. And we're just going to do the next section, and we're going to do some joining in this section. Now, I actually missed a video here, but basically it's the same as all the others. You actually hoop your stabilizer and stitch the first colour onto the stabilizer. Then you do what you can see here now, which is place your piece of batting or your heavy felt over the hoop and stitch the second colour. I just didn't press the button properly, so I missed it. So as you can see there, it's just going to stitch, as it did with the other designs, you're just stitching the outline, and on the batting it just stitches the different colour placements that you're going to have. Now we're going to do the same as we did before. We're going to cut away the excess batting or felt from the front of the hoop. So exactly the same as we did in the first segment. Now the first section is the basket. So as we did before, we're just going to tape the fabric on the back, the basket fabric, and as you can see, I really do use scraps. So that's on the back, and if you're not having it reversible, you just do your bit on the front and tape it in place. Pop the hoop back into the machine and just stitch that colour down. As before, we remove it from the hoop. Now, I again forgot to start the video, so I've already done the back, but what you're doing is you're just removing the excess fabric from where the other fabrics are going to stitch. So you do that on the front and the back if it's reversible. Now we're going to do the cushion or the pillow bit. Now I've just used white fabric. Again, if you're making it reversible, make sure the right side's facing up towards you. And then we do that again on the front. We're just going to stitch the next colour, which is just going to stitch down that cushion or pillow portion. As I say, the same steps as before, basically. It's repeated right throughout this design. Take the hoop away from the machine, and again just going to cut away that portion on the back and the front, just where the next two colours or next two fabrics go. That's the back done. And the front done. Now what I'm doing this time, because I'm making it baby shower, I'm going to put the pink fabric on the back, right side's facing up towards you, and just covering that baby bonnet portion of the back of the hoop. And on the front of the hoop, I'm just going to put the blue fabric. Take your hoop back to the machine and just stitch that next colour just to hold the fabrics down. And again, at this point, I'm just using white bobbin thread and white thread on top. You're not going to see these stitches. Now we're just going to cut away the final excess piece of fabric just around the little face. So just there on the back and again on the front. And for the last time, we're just going to put the face fabric, tape it on the back of the hoop, hold it in place, and the front of the hoop. And for the last time for this segment, we're back to the machine just to attach those fabrics. So there's quite a bit in this one, but do it step by step and you'll get there. Okay, so just as before, we're just going to cut away all the excess fabric from all the pieces on the back of the hoop and on the front. Now, just something to be mindful of when you're doing the completely reversible design like mine, where I've got pink one side and blue the other side, is what colour to do the bobbin thread. So I actually did a grey colour on mine, because I thought the pink and the grey and the blue and the grey. Yeah, I think probably white would have been just as easy, because I have got pink and white fabric and blue and white fabric. But you just need to bear in mind, if you're doing it reversible, that you're going to have a different colour somewhere along the line there for the bobbin. I don't know, maybe you could get a pink and blue variegated thread. But as I say, I went with a sort of a grey colour with mine, and it looks fine. All the rest of them obviously just match. The other way of doing it, of course, is just do the whole entire design with the white satin stitch throughout the whole lot, no matter what fabric you've got. That's one way of doing it, or with all the brown. I like this part because you seem to be putting lots and lots of pieces of fabric and it looks a bit messy, and then you get to this part and it looks nice and clean. So the next step is off to the machine to do some zigzag. Now for this, because I've got lots of different colours here and I'm doing zigzag, I'm just using white bobbin thread and white cotton. If you've got really contrasting colours, like a really dark brown or something like that, you may want to use the clear monofilament thread to do your zigzagging. I find white's fine. It goes with most things. So the zigzagging is just going to stop just at that top of the basket, and this is where we're going to make our first join. So it's very exciting. So we take the hoop from the machine and we can see it zigzagged up just that sort of the bottom of the basket. Now you're going to get your basket piece from the first portion, and it's just going to fit along that tiny little piece there. It fits in, and you're doing stitch line upon stitch line, and you're just going to tape it in place. Then you take that all back to your machine, and I'm just trying to zoom in a bit here so you can see better. Now it's just going to zigzag just that little line across the top of the basket. And then it's going to stop. And we get the machine to stop here just so you can make sure that you're happy with the join. So what you're looking for, I'll just show it hopefully a bit more closer here, yeah, is that both sides of the fabric are caught. That's what you want to see, and that there's no either no gaps, or that it's stitched properly. And if you're happy with it, then you just need to carry on and just continue with the zigzag. If you're not happy with the joint, you need to rip it out at this point, because that is the crucial part of the joining. So it's just as long as it's caught both pieces of fabric in. That next stitch is just going to zigzag down again and stop again, where we're going to join the next part of the design. So again, we remove it from the hoop, and you can see where we've joined that basket piece. Now the next part is the other part, the bottom of the basket piece from your first hooping, and you can see it fits stitch line upon stitch line, just as before. So there is a slight overlap, because you're actually getting the stitch line on the first piece you stitched and the stitch line that's in the hoop. And you can see they fit together nicely. And just get that taped in place. And then the next step's just going to zigzag all the way down and join that second piece. So back at the machine, and I've got the machine going, or the video going in real time here, so you can see how it goes. But if you can stop your machine and start it or slow it down however you feel, just to get this little bit of zigzag done. Like if you think it's going off course, then stop it and have a look. But otherwise, you just zigzag and it will follow the edges of those two joins, basically the two fabrics, and just zigzag them together. And we get the machine to stop there again, just so you can check and be happy with that join. And you see, I'm just checking, and you can just see it's caught all edges. There's nothing weird happening there. Both edges are caught, and I'm happy with that. So I'm just going to put it back in and just continue finishing off the zigzag. But that's it. That's the hard part of the design done now. So now it just carries on and just zigzags the rest of the raw edges of the design. And from this point, if you're making it reversible, that's when you want to change your bobbin thread to match your top thread. So this is all done in white at this stage, and as I say, it's going to be covered. You're not going to see any of these pieces in the meantime. Right, the next bit I'm not showing you all, plus my video's gone a bit weird, but basically it's just stitching out the design. So you've got the brown of the basket, I've done yellow for the cushion, you've got the dark of the eyes, and then the pink flesh tone, and then I've just finished doing the, I used grey for around the pink and the blue bonnet. See it better in this picture, where you can see we've gone through the satin stitch and done all the features. And I'm just cutting away the jump stitches. And we've finished part 2, so we're just removing it completely from the hoop, and we're just going to cut away that excess stabiliser around the edges. It's not quite as neat as the front. Just get some sharp scissors and get those jump stitches. You can't do much else with the base. You can see there I've got the grey bobbin thread in on the pink. So I probably could have gone white in all reality, because the white and the blue probably would look very similar to the grey I've got there actually. But there we go. As I say, we're just cutting away close to the edges on the satin stitch, and just on that one raw edge there at the bottom of the baby's head, you can cut a wee bit closer. And now we're ready for the last part, which is, you've already done the hard part, so that's good. Now we're on to the last file, and it's just, again, the correct hoop size that you're using, and file name is Baby C. Now I've deliberately left the blanket fairly plain on this part for, you can add names to it, or you could use a piece of fleece rather than a bit of fabric. You could do quite a few things with it. Sure, you could pretty much do this without me showing you, but the first thing you do is stitch out the outline on your stabiliser, and then add either your fleece, or, as we have here, the heavy felt. And you're just going to stitch that second outline out onto the felt, which is just going to give you your fabric placements. And as I say, you've done the hard parts now. This part's relatively easy. It's just the one join. And so we've got the 3 different bits of fabric. Again, we've got the basket piece, the white frill of the basket, and then just the blanket. So you can see here, we're just whizzing through. You're cutting away, just as you did before, just the excess batting or felt from the design. If you're backing it, you're going to put your fabric on the back of the hoop, your basket fabric, and tape in place, or just on the front of the hoop. Pop your hoop into the machine, and you're just going to stitch down that both lots of fabrics. You're just going to cut away that excess fabric just above that frill portion. Exactly the same as we did before. And then we're just going to put the frill fabric, just that white piece of fabric, on the back of the hoop, and again on the front of the hoop. Back to the machine, and then we're just going to stitch the colour to attach that frill. And again, we're just going to cut away that top edge of the frill, just where the baby blanket's going to go. And you do that on the front and the back. And last time, we're just going to put the blanket fabric. And again, I'm going with the pink on the back of the hoop and the blue fabric on the front. Off to the machine, just stitch that round that attaches both fabrics. And for the last time, we're just going to cut away all the fabrics front and back of the hoop. Now the next step will be the zigzagging and the joining, so I'm just going to use my white bobbin thread and my white top thread as I did before. You won't see it. So it's just going to stitch to where it joins. So this last join's just exactly the same as you did before. You can see where the zigzag has finished, and you're going to place your already completed portions against that. And again, you're doing the stitch line on stitch line, so a tiny wee overlap, and you can see you start where the zigzag finished and it all fits together. You can see how it looks in the photo, and just tape it in place. This is the last join, and as I think the previous one was the harder one, this one it all fits nicely. Right, so we're now back at the machine, and we're just going to do that last join. So I've tried to get it closer so you can see it in real time. And again, you're just looking for that zigzag to join both pieces and not to have any gaps. And if you need to, stop the machine and restart, or slow the machine down, whatever works for you. Now we'll just stop at the bottom of that join, just again so that you can have a quick look and make sure that you're happy with the join. I hope you can see it's just caught both edges. Now we're just going to continue on and finish the zigzag along the bottom of the basket, and then it's going to stop again for that final join. So I think we're just going to whiz through this bit. And again, the machine's going to stop just where we're going to join the top edge of that basket. Now I did this at the machine. Please don't feel you have to do that. You're more than happy to take it, the hoop from the machine and line everything up, with the hoop off the machine. I'm being a bit crazy here and doing it all while I'm sitting there. Now it's just going to zigzag that little edge there, which is just attaching that final part of the basket. And same as before, it's just going to zigzag just that little bit and stop, just so you can check that you're happy with the join. And once you're happy with the join, then you just stitch the next colour, which just continues on with that zigzag. It just zigzags that final portion between the blanket and the frill. And so for the next steps, where you're wanting to be changing your bobbin thread to match, if you're doing reversible, and I'm not making you watch the whole video now of everything stitching out. So basically you've stitched the brown of the basket, the white of the frill, and the last one, which you can see here, is just the satin stitch around the blanket. And again, reversible, change your bobbin thread for all three. And that is it. Completed. You did before, remove everything from the hoop and just cut away all the excess stabilizer from the front and the back. Now the last step is just to remove all traces of that water-soluble stabilizer. So I use hot water, just boiling water from the jug actually, and as you can see I've got a Q-tip there and I'm just brushing away all the water-soluble stabilizer so that there's no traces of it. Now if you're making it, as I have for this sample, as a completely standalone like little baby announcement, it's finished. You've got the hanger there, you've got all the edges done, it's ready to go. If you're going to put it onto the quilt, like my smaller version, then what you're going to do is just place the design on the quilt where you want it and stitch it to the design. Now I've got a very amateur video here, baby shower. You can just imagine that you've got the little design sitting up there, and is it going to be a boy or a girl? So it'd be really cute. You could do lots of fun things with this design set. Now this sample I made in the 6x10 hoop, so that ends up being 13 inches wide and 10 inches high. Now the design set includes 5x7 hoop, 6x10 hoop and an 8x12. So I think the 5x7 ends up being a finished size of 11 inches wide and 8.5 high. Now the 8x12 hoop, it actually ends up being 16.5 inches wide and 13 inches high. So you've got a bit of scope there depending on what you're wanting to use the design for. Now I just thought I'd show you the beauty of the large appliques. I know in the photo you can see that I'm stitching the Teddy and the Moon to the quilt, but the whole idea with them is you can have your quilt top made basically, as you can see there, the Sweet Dreams little one. And if you wanted to have the baby's name on it after the baby was born, you could create the whole quilt, then you could create the large baby applique and put the baby's name on it, and then all you have to do once you know those details is, as you can see in the photo there, you actually stitch your completed applique to the top of the quilt, and you just do that with monofilament thread, and that way you've got the bulk of the work done, and then you just need to basically wait for the baby to be born to get the details. All those designs shown there are included in the design set, so depending on what size you want, you could just have a quilt that said Sweet Dreams with a larger baby in the as the middle portion. I'm sure you quilters will come up with some really great layouts for using this design. So anyway, I hope you did enjoy the video and I hope you enjoy the design, and please make sure that you join our Facebook group and share what you make with the designs. We love seeing what people do with them, and as I say, I've got one sample there and I'm sure you guys will come up with some beautiful quilts using these designs. Thank you. Bye.